Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever felt like you're walking through life alone, unseen, misunderstood, and carrying a weight nobody else seems to notice? What if I told you that those lonely steps you've been taking are the very reason you were chosen, that God has a hidden purpose for every silent season, every unanswered question, and every closed door? Tonight, you're about to discover why the most powerful, destined individuals often walk alone, and how your solitude is not a setback, but a sacred preparation for something greater than you can imagine. And when that strength begins to take root within you, something extraordinary happens. You stop fearing the silence, you stop resenting the solitude, you begin to understand that the quiet places were not empty at all. They were filled with divine presence. You start to see how every step you took in darkness was ordered, how every delay carried instruction, and how every heartbreak carved out the depth you now carry. The chosen ones learned that loneliness was never a lack of people, but a space made sacred for revelation. You realize that while others were busy chasing recognition, you were being equipped with understanding. While they built reputations, you built resilience. While they collected praise, you collected wisdom. That is why when your time comes, you will move differently. You won't rush to prove yourself, because you'll know that what's truly powerful never needs to announce itself. The chosen carry a quiet authority, the kind that comes from walking with God through seasons where no one else could walk beside them. The path of divine calling teaches you to see through illusions. You start recognizing that the things people chase, status, approval, comfort, are fleeting shadows. You've tasted something deeper, something real. You've discovered that peace doesn't come from the world's applause, but from alignment with purpose. The chosen walk alone long enough to detach from what is temporary so they can become vessels for what is eternal. There will be moments when God keeps you hidden even when you feel ready. You'll wonder why doors remain closed, why recognition still doesn't come. But if you could see what he sees, you'd understand that premature exposure destroys potential. A tree must first send its roots deep into the earth before it rises tall into the light. If it grows too quickly, the first storm will uproot it. God's hidden ones are like that. He lets them grow underground until their foundation is unshakable. Then, when they emerge, nothing can topple them. The chosen walk alone so they can learn the discipline of stillness. The world moves fast, and in its rush it forgets how to hear. But divine assignments require precision. They demand obedience to timing that only silence can teach. When you are chosen, your success will not depend on speed but on sensitivity. To know when to move, when to wait, when to speak, and when to stay silent. Only those who have learned to walk alone can hear those quiet instructions clearly. Solitude transforms you in ways nothing else can. It teaches humility because there's no audience to impress. It teaches strength because there's no one to lean on. It teaches faith because there's nothing left to hold except God's promise. And it teaches gratitude because when breakthrough finally comes, you'll remember every lonely night that prepared you for it. You'll cherish the moments that once felt unbearable because you'll see they were building something within you that success never could. Sometimes, God separates you not only from people, but from versions of yourself that cannot walk where you're going. You'll notice old desires fading, habits dying, and relationships shifting. It feels like loss, but it's pruning. You are being stripped of what no longer fits your future. Every detour, every closed chapter, every goodbye carries the same quiet message: make room. The chosen must be emptied before they can be filled. You'll come to understand that walking alone doesn't mean you are isolated. It means you are being individualized. You are being crafted into something that cannot be replicated. The path of the chosen is never copied because their assignment is never duplicated. You will face trials designed specifically for your growth, challenges no one else could endure in your place. That is why comparing your journey to others is pointless. You are being measured against your calling, not against someone else's. And when you finally begin to embrace this truth, you'll stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Thank you," because you'll see how every hard season forged the discipline you now possess. You'll recognize that pain was the price of clarity, that rejection was the redirection you needed, that aloneness was the classroom where you learned to depend on divine provision instead of human validation. The chosen ones are not meant to blend in, they are meant to stand apart. Their very difference is the signal of their destiny, but difference comes with discomfort. You'll often find that the people around you won't understand your drive, your convictions, your sense of calling. They might call you unrealistic, too intense, or too focused. But what they don't realize is that your focus is sacred. It's the fire that keeps your purpose alive. And that fire can only stay lit in the quiet, where distractions die. You'll begin to realize that what once felt like separation was actually protection. God keeps you away from certain people not because He's denying you connection, but because He's preserving your direction. Not everyone who starts with you can finish with you. Some were meant to witness your beginning, but not to carry your burden. When you walk alone, it's not because you are unworthy of company. It's because your calling cannot be shared equally. It demands full ownership, complete surrender, and unwavering faith. The chosen understand that their solitude is sacred space. It becomes their workshop for transformation. They learn to speak less and listen more. They learn to observe, to discern, to see beyond appearances. They discover that wisdom is not born from talking. It's born from waiting, from watching, from letting truth reveal itself in time. And when they finally speak, their words carry weight because they come from depth. Every chosen soul must face a wilderness. The wilderness is not the absence of God. It is the assurance of His presence without distractions. It is where dependence becomes devotion, where hope becomes habit, and where belief turns into conviction. In the wilderness, you are stripped of everything external so that what is eternal can emerge. And when you emerge from it, you no longer need the world's approval to know your worth. You start to see that the hidden seasons are not pauses in your journey. They are the journey. That's where identity is forged. That's where vision becomes clear. That's where strength becomes unbreakable. The crowd seeks outcomes. The chosen seek process. Because they've learned that process is what makes the outcome possible. And when the chosen finally step into their calling, they do not forget the path that brought them there. They carry with them the humility of the hidden years, the gratitude of the waiting years, and the wisdom of the lonely years. They move differently because they know what it cost to stand there. They speak softly because they remember how silence shaped them. They lead with compassion because they know what it means to walk in pain. The chosen walk alone not to separate themselves from the world, but to prepare themselves to serve it. They are taken away so that they can later be sent back with clarity, strength, and vision. And when they return, they are not the same. Their hearts are steadier, their faith is deeper, their purpose is unshakable. You will begin to see how God's timing was never slow, it was perfect. Every season you thought was wasted was actually preparation. Every unanswered prayer was a divine rerouting. Every lonely night was a classroom of trust. The chosen learn to interpret delay as design, rejection as redirection, and obscurity as protection. Eventually, you will no longer see solitude as suffering, but as sacred ground. You will look around and realize that you are never truly alone. You are simply walking with an invisible companion, one who guides your steps with precision and purpose. And that realization will fill you with peace no crowd could ever provide. You'll reach a point where you no longer crave validation because you've already been chosen. You no longer chase belonging because you've already been claimed. You no longer fear being alone because solitude has become your sanctuary. And as you keep walking this narrow path, you'll notice something subtle yet profound. Others will start to follow the light you carry, not because you sought followers, but because your authenticity speaks louder than words. Those who once misunderstood your solitude will now seek your wisdom. Those who doubted you will now be inspired by your endurance, and you will realize that the very road that once felt lonely has become a beacon for others who are still in their darkness. This is how the chosen ones fulfill their purpose, not by avoiding solitude, but by embracing it until it transforms them into vessels of light. They walk alone so they can lead others home. They endure silence so they can later speak words that awaken souls. They accept isolation so they can emerge carrying illumination. And through it all, they come to understand that what once looked like loneliness was, in truth, divine companionship in disguise. And once that realization takes root, that the path of solitude was not abandonment, but appointment, you begin to see your journey with new eyes. You see that every moment of stillness was orchestrated to deepen your understanding of yourself and of the one who called you. You begin to discern patterns you once overlooked. The setbacks that used to make you question your worth now stand as evidence of divine precision. You recognize that every closed door was not an obstacle, but a safeguard keeping you aligned with destiny. You start to understand that what you lost was never meant to anchor you, and what remains is exactly what you need to rise. As you continue to walk the narrow road, a quiet confidence begins to replace the restlessness that once lived inside you. You no longer strive to be seen because you've already been chosen. You no longer chase opportunities because you know what is yours will never need to be forced. There is a calmness in your spirit, a kind of peace that only comes after you've walked through the storm and discovered you didn't break. You realize that strength is not loud and purpose is not hurried. The chosen walk slowly, deliberately, because they understand that destiny never demands desperation. In the solitude of preparation, you learn that obedience matters more than speed. There will be times when you feel ready to move, but the divine instruction is still to wait. And though waiting tests your patience, you begin to understand that waiting is not inactivity, it is development. It is the unseen construction of your character. Every season of delay is a season of refinement. And when the chosen ones finally step forward, they do so not with arrogance, but with quiet assurance that the time has finally come. You will begin to notice how differently you see the world. What once frustrated you now teaches you. What once scared you now strengthens you. You realize that solitude didn't make you smaller, it expanded your perception. It gave you the vision to see through illusion, to sense truth beneath appearance, to recognize the eternal in the temporary. You see how the world runs in circles, chasing validation that fades as quickly as it's given, and you, who once sought the same, now find fulfillment in stillness. That is the transformation only solitude can bring, to be unmoved by the noise of the crowd because your soul has learned the language of silence. The chosen walk alone not because they are meant to separate forever, but because they must first discover who they are without influence. Before they can lead, they must learn to stand alone in conviction. Before they can guide others, they must conquer their own doubt. And before they can speak truth, they must first learn to live it when no one is watching. Solitude teaches authenticity. It strips away pretense. It makes you honest, not just with others, but with yourself. As your journey deepens, you start to sense how carefully every trial has been designed. The people who left you taught you independence. The dreams that seemed to die taught you surrender. The silence that once felt unbearable taught you how to listen beyond words. You come to see that nothing was wasted. Every disappointment carried purpose. Every heartbreak carved room for empathy. Every unanswered question became an invitation to trust. The chosen ones eventually learn that purpose is not built in comfort. It is built in surrender. There will come a moment when the same solitude that once felt like wilderness will begin to feel like home. You'll stop trying to escape it and start drawing strength from it. You'll begin to understand that quiet seasons are sacred gifts, a chance to reconnect with vision, to refine your focus, to nurture your spirit away from the demands of the world. You'll see how isolation can be a sanctuary when your perspective shifts from "I am alone" to "I am becoming." Because in truth, you were never abandoned. You were being redefined. The chosen are shaped in layers, and each layer is revealed through testing. There will be times when everything you thought was certain will be shaken, and yet somehow you will not fall. Because what God builds in solitude cannot be destroyed by public storms. You have been rooted too deeply. Your faith has grown too strong. You no longer cling to outcomes. You trust in alignment. You no longer panic when things fall apart. You recognize the pattern of renewal. That is the wisdom of those who have walked alone long enough to see how every ending gives birth to a new beginning. And when that understanding takes hold, you begin to move differently. You become less reactive, more reflective. You stop chasing everything that glitters because you've already seen how easily the world's gold turns to dust. You begin to value the unseen over the visible, the eternal over the immediate, the meaningful over the popular. Solitude has matured your appetite. You no longer hunger for attention, you hunger for truth. The chosen walk alone so that when they are surrounded later, they do not lose themselves again. They are sent into the quiet to develop an unshakable identity, one that is not built on approval, applause, or comparison. The crowd can change its opinion in a day, but purpose never wavers. And the chosen learn that the only validation that matters is divine confirmation. When you've heard your name called in the silence, you no longer need to hear it shouted in the crowd. You start to see how solitude was never about separation. It was about preparation for service. You were set apart so that you could be sent back with clarity. The lonely seasons were teaching you empathy, resilience, patience, and wisdom, all tools you will need when your influence expands. For influence without depth is dangerous, and God ensures the chosen are deep enough to carry the weight of their calling. You begin to live from a place of gratitude, gratitude for the doors that didn't open, for the people who walked away, for the seasons that seemed to stall your progress. You see now that those moments preserved you. You see how divine timing protected you from premature exposure, how divine pruning removed what could have poisoned your growth. The loneliness that once broke you has now built you into something unshakable. When you reach this place, peace becomes your default posture. You no longer resist the unfolding of your story, you cooperate with it. You trust that even when you can't see the plan, the planner is still present. You no longer beg for signs, you move by faith, and in that faith, you find the courage to keep walking even when the path is dim. The chosen understand that light is given step by step, not all at once. And that is enough. There will still be moments when the old loneliness returns, when doubt whispers that you are forgotten. But now, you recognize those moments as reminders to return to your source, to reconnect with the one who walked with you all along. You'll see that solitude was never a season, it was a skill. It taught you how to find strength in silence, direction in stillness, and companionship in spirit. The chosen learned to carry peace into chaos, to bring clarity into confusion, to stand tall in the storms that make others collapse. Because they've already been through storms alone. They've already faced the winds and learned to bend without breaking. And when the world finally meets them, it sees not the cost, but the calm, the quiet authority of one who has walked through fire and emerged refined, not consumed. As your path unfolds, people will begin to notice the light you carry, though they may not understand where it came from. They will sense the peace that surrounds you, the depth in your presence, the steadiness in your words. They'll call it confidence, but you'll know it's something more. It's the product of walking alone with purpose. It's the calm born of communion with the divine. It's the result of every hidden battle you fought and won in silence. And as you continue to move forward, the journey no longer feels like a test, it feels like a calling fulfilled. You understand that the chosen do not walk alone forever. They walk alone until they no longer need to depend on anything external to stay faithful. And then, when their foundation is firm, they are reintroduced to the world, not as they were, but as who they were always meant to be. The world will wonder where your strength comes from, and you will smile, remembering the nights when strength was all you had left. They will praise your wisdom, unaware that it was born from pain. They will admire your peace, not knowing the chaos that once lived inside you. And through it all, you will remain grounded because solitude taught you that success is not elevation, it is alignment. You no longer seek to rise, you seek to serve, and the path ahead, no matter how narrow or uncertain, will no longer intimidate you. For you have learned the rhythm of divine companionship, and that is enough to sustain you anywhere. You have learned that walking alone with purpose is better than walking with crowds without direction. You have learned that divine timing is never late. And above all, you have learned that those who are chosen may walk alone for a time, but they never walk without guidance. And once you begin to live with that awareness, every step forward carries a different kind of weight. You no longer move with haste because you understand that every moment has purpose. You no longer rush to arrive because you've come to see that the journey itself is where transformation happens. The chosen understand that destiny is not a single event waiting somewhere in the distance. It is a continual unfolding that happens within. Each season, each challenge, each pause is a page in a divine narrative being written through your life. And so you begin to walk with reverence, knowing that every breath, every delay, and every detour serves something greater than you can see. In that awareness, your heart softens. You begin to look at others differently, not as competitors or critics, but as fellow travelers who are each carrying their own hidden burdens. You stop needing to prove your worth because you've already been affirmed in silence. You stop resenting the world for misunderstanding you because you see now that misunderstanding was protection. You learn to bless those who left, forgive those who wounded, and release those who never believed in you. Because you now know that they played their part in shaping the strength you carry. You no longer cling to what was or chase what could be. You start living fully where you are, understanding that every present moment contains everything you need for your next step. That's what the chosen learn, that peace doesn't come from arrival, it comes from alignment. And alignment happens when you stop fighting the flow of divine order and start trusting it completely. You begin to live not from striving, but from surrender. You no longer force outcomes. You follow peace, and peace, you discover, always knows the way. The solitude that once felt like a burden now becomes a place of renewal. You start to crave it the way a weary traveler craves rest. You retreat not because you are hiding, but because you are refueling. The quiet becomes your sanctuary, the stillness your teacher. You realize that solitude is not about escaping the world, it's about learning how to stand strong in it. It's about maintaining clarity when surrounded by noise, about protecting your inner stillness even when life demands movement. The chosen are not called to isolation forever. They are called to mastery over distraction. Through this growth, humility begins to deepen. You understand that being chosen was never about superiority. It was about responsibility. You were set apart not to be exalted, but to serve with greater wisdom. You see that the journey was never about becoming greater than others, but about becoming more available to purpose. The chosen carry something sacred, and sacred things cannot be handled carelessly. That's why the preparation had to be so intense. Every loss, every test, every lonely season was refining your ability to carry something holy without breaking under its weight. You begin to notice that the way you interpret life has changed. Where others see coincidence, you see alignment. Where they see delays, you see divine choreography. You become more observant, more aware, more grateful. The little things that once went unnoticed now speak volumes. A conversation becomes confirmation, a closed door becomes direction, a sudden stillness becomes signal. You have learned to see with spiritual eyes, and that sight is a gift only the chosen earn through silence. There's a new strength rising within you, one that doesn't need recognition to be validated. You can stand in uncertainty without panic, because you know that purpose never rushes. You can walk through the unknown with confidence, because you've walked through it before and survived. The chosen understand that the unknown is not the enemy, it's the field where faith is exercised, and faith, once matured, becomes a kind of power that nothing external can shake, and then something even deeper begins to happen. You begin to desire less for yourself and more for others. The very pain that once isolated you becomes the compassion that connects you. You start to recognize familiar struggles in the eyes of those around you. You start to see lost versions of yourself in their stories. And instead of judgment, you offer understanding. Instead of superiority, you offer service. The chosen are not marked by their titles or talents, but by their capacity to love through empathy born of suffering. You begin to see that the road you walked alone was never meant only for you. It was meant to equip you to guide others who would one day walk a similar path. The chosen walk first so they can light the way for those who follow. Their solitude becomes a map, their endurance a message, their transformation a testimony. That's why your pain had to be so personal, because one day your words will heal others in the exact way you needed healing yourself. The chosen ones begin to move differently through life. They are no longer driven by urgency, they are anchored in purpose. Their words slow down, their decisions carry weight. Their actions flow from discernment, not impulse. They've learned that every step taken without alignment leads to exhaustion, but every step taken with peace leads to fulfillment. They no longer chase opportunities, they attract them by being ready when the moment comes. Because readiness is the fruit of seasons spent unseen. You start to realize that solitude has done something miraculous inside you. It has removed fear, not the absence of caution, but the fear that once controlled you. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. You've looked all those fears in the face during your silent seasons, and they no longer hold power over you. You are no longer moved by praise or shaken by criticism, because neither defines your direction anymore. You walk in quiet confidence, knowing that every step is guided by something greater than your own understanding. And as you continue this journey, you find yourself walking lighter. The heaviness of needing to explain yourself fades away. You no longer feel the urge to justify your path to anyone. You know that divine instruction doesn't need validation to be real. You move with assurance that timing is always exact, and what is meant for you will find you without striving. That calm certainty is what separates the chosen from the restless. The chosen do not chase. They attract through alignment, patience, and consistency. Even in the face of uncertainty, you find peace. You've learned that control is an illusion and surrender is strength. You know now that you can be at peace in the storm because peace was never the absence of chaos. It was the presence of faith. You've learned to breathe through difficulty, to trust through delay, to stay still when the world demands motion. The chosen understand that divine purpose is never rushed because what is eternal does not panic. The longer you walk this path, the more you understand that being chosen doesn't mean being constantly strong. It means being constantly surrendered. There will still be days of doubt, moments of weakness, and hours of exhaustion. But now you approach them differently. You no longer see them as signs of failure but as reminders of dependence. You've learned that your greatest strength was never your independence. It was your reliance on the one who called you. You begin to move through life with quiet authority, the kind that comes from experience rather than position. You carry an atmosphere of peace that others can feel before you speak. You no longer need to demand attention because presence itself becomes your influence. The same solitude that once stripped you bare now clothes you with wisdom, and that wisdom cannot be faked. It radiates naturally because it was earned honestly. And as you look around, you start to realize that walking alone has not left you empty. It has made you whole. You have become someone who can stand in both silence and storm without losing balance. You can lead without arrogance, give without depletion, love without attachment, and wait without fear. Because you've learned that true fulfillment is not found in what you receive, but in who you become. The chosen are not defined by how many follow them, but by how deeply they walk in truth. They know that their journey is not about being celebrated, but about being faithful. They live each day aware that purpose is not measured by popularity, but by obedience. And when they finally reach the places they once prayed for, they don't stand there in pride. They stand in gratitude. They know they are only there because they trusted through the times when they walked alone. And so you keep walking, steadily, quietly, faithfully. The same solitude that once felt like exile now feels like elevation. You no longer walk to escape, you walk to fulfill. You no longer walk in search of meaning, you walk as meaning itself. The path is still narrow, still quiet, still costly, but now every step feels sacred because you finally understand that walking alone was never a curse. It was always the invitation to walk with the divine.